Participants level,
Oh,
or should we wait a couple more minutes?
let's wait a few minutes and let everybody join up. We had 40 people waiting in the waiting room, but sometimes it'll take a second for it to
All right.
catch up.
I'll be looking to you to tell me when we're ready to go, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Okay, Kelly, it looks like our attendees have leveled off for now. We can
Great.
get
Thanks,
started.
Leah. Yeah, thank you. So, hey, a couple of appreciations here before we get started. Just first of all, to you all who are joining us here tonight, thanks for taking some time out of your schedules, your evenings to be with us here to talk about coastal steelhead season planning. Taking a quick look at the participants. Many of you have been around for a while and have been down this journey with us for the last few years. So thanks for joining in. Welcome, new folks. One thing I will say is that last year we heard a lot of feedback from folks about, hey, let's just get to the point. Let's talk about how last year performed and what we can expect this year in terms of forecasts, right? So we heard you loud and clear. In the past, we spent a lot of time talking about steelhead life history. We've talked about climate conditions. We've talked about, ocean conditions and those potential impacts. But we're gonna dive in here and talk to you pretty candidly about how last year went and what our plan is moving forward as we go through this planning process. So appreciate you hanging in there with us. The other appreciation I have is for the folks on the staff folks on this call. This is a lot of work, and it's not something that happens like, the week before a town hall, right? We're doing spawning ground surveys, we're meeting with co-managers, we're analyzing data. So the folks you're going to hear from today have put a lot of work into this effort. And the other thing I want to mention is that you may have tuned in on Monday morning. We had a fish committee meeting where one of the agenda items was the coastal steelhead season planning. We were trying to keep our commission up to speed with our process and where we were at in the process. And you may have heard me talk about the lack of supervision, the great work despite the lack of supervision. I just want to make it very clear. I was talking about myself when I said that. I want to just acknowledge and laud Rob Allen. Many of you know Rob. Rob's been with the agency a long time, and we had a recent vacancy occur in our regional program manager, and Rob stepped in, stepped up, and has done an awesome job leading this team through the fisheries this summer, as well as this process. So just want to appreciate everybody on this call, and a special shout out to Rob for stepping up as a longtime employee with awesome leadership skills and helping us get us to where we are today. Maybe with that, we'll go to the next slide, Leah, or Scott, excuse me, Aaron. So tonight we got a relatively robust agenda. We're here for a couple hours with you all. We want to talk about 23-24, kind of a review of how things went last year in terms of the forecast, in terms of the returns. We also want to talk about the forecasts, the preliminary forecasts that we're looking at for season planning this year. We also, some of you may be aware, who have tuned in the past, we initiated a study to validate the efficacy of the regulations that we've promulgated in the past with respect to no fishing from a floating device. So we got some preliminary information from you all, or for you all, on that work. And I think it's fair to say we got a question for you, but we'll get to that. We're also going to provide you a coastwide summary, and what we're talking about there is, hey, you all have done a great job over the last few years providing us with things to think about. with regard to these fisheries. So we're looking at this year's forecast. We're considering what we've heard from you all in past town hall meetings in terms of fisheries you'd like to see. So you're gonna see what might be possible for 24-25 season planning. But I want to be really clear. These are not set in stone. We still have a lot of work to do with our co-managers. Lots of conversations yet to happen, but wanted to daylight for you some of the things we're thinking about in terms of what might be possible for the upcoming season. We also want to hear from you in terms of questions that you might have and other ideas that you might have for us. So we're going to spend hopefully most of our time on that agenda item number 5, and then we're going to revisit the timeline just to make sure that folks are on board and understand what we have left to do between now and beginning of December. And I think it makes sense, maybe Aaron, to go to the next slide and just give folks a kind of an early preview, right? So in terms of, and for those of you who have tuned in before, you've seen this slide before, right? So starting in mid-July, we're exchanging data with co-managers. About that mid-August time frame, we got escapement estimates finalized. Early September, we're exchanging those preseason forecasts with co-managers. Early October, we've got hopefully agreement with co-managers. And I will say, we're not quite there yet everywhere. October 21st of this year, we had that special fish committee meeting. That was on Monday. And here we are on the 23rd with our first town hall. And then I won't go over it, but you can see the work that's left to do. We also have a tentative date for November 13th for the second town hall, where we're going to communicate where we've landed with our co-managers and our plans for seasons for the 24-25 season. So that's what we hope to accomplish this evening. Again, looking for a lot of engagement from you all. We're interested in not only your questions, but what ideas you have. We often get accused of having this thing fully baked before we even talk to you. I want to assure folks that's not the case. We do this because we want to share our thoughts, but also solicit input from you all, and we want to use that input to craft our seasons. And I think when we get to kind of how we're thinking about the upcoming season, you'll see many of those ideas demonstrated in our thinking. So maybe with that, I'll turn it over to Leah, who can walk us through. It feels a little weird walking through Zoom instructions, because it feels like, since the pandemic, we've been in Zoom mode in a lot of different facets of our work. But I think it's worthwhile to kind of talk through the Zoom etiquette and how to raise your hand and things like that. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah and stop talking for a minute. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Kelly. So these haven't changed really. Most of you will recognize them from years past, but all callers will be muted upon entry. Ask a question by raising your hand. If you're calling in, you can raise a hand by dialing *9 on your phone. If you're calling in from a computer, you can find the hand icon at the bottom of your screen. Sometimes it's a smiley face reactions to little button, depending on your Zoom. When you are called on for a question or comment, we encourage you to speak up and provide comments live. To speak, you'll need to unmute yourself by using the mute button on your computer or device, or enter *6 if you're calling from a phone. You can type additional questions in the chat. However, we may not be able to respond to all questions tonight. A record of written questions will be made available to staff after the webinar. Please limit questions to 1 at a time. If you have technical issues during the webinar, please drop us a note in the chat and we will help you through it. Be respectful of others. Be tough on the issues and questions, not on people or organizations. No personal attacks, insults, or threats. Listen and assume positive intentions from those speaking. Speak and act professionally. No offensive, disrespectful, or derogatory language, including profanity. Assume positive intentions. Share questions or comment in written format online at wdfw.gov/coastal steelhead. And please limit questions to 1 at a time. Once again, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Leah. And I think now's the time I'm going to turn it over, or no, let's see. Yeah, I think I'm turning it over to Rob at this point in time. Take it away,
Yep.
Rob.
Yep. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Leah. Thanks for that, Kelly. Appreciate you saying that. But you kept saying he's been around a long time, and maybe I should say it has been a long time. But this is actually 41 years for me, so it's quite a bit. I know probably looks like I started when I was 10 years old, but anyway, hey, yeah, we've all been through this quite a few times, or a lot of us have, and we know a lot of the factors that influence our sport fishery development. Oh, by the way, my name is Rob Allen. I forgot to mention that, but Kelly already had. So anyway, factors influencing sport fishery development. Our objective is actually design fisheries that meet management objectives and provide opportunity. And some of the things that influence our decisions on fisheries is evaluation of escapement goals and what our forecasts are. And of course, we're always talking with our co-managers. Environmental conditions are a big one. When we think about environmental conditions, we think about river flows and estuary survival and ocean conditions, of course, and there's always predators. There's a lot of factors that can influence things that a lot of times we don't have control over, unless you watch some of the political discussions. Hatchery returns, of course, is another one. Available creel or data. Where do we need to monitor? We don't have available funds to monitor everything, but and also what is the creel data or the monitoring efforts telling us? And then, of course, the big one is fishery impacts. How are our fisheries impacting wild stocks? Next slide, please. Just reiterate what the agenda said. 23-24 review. You know what? A lot of people don't know 23-24 means. We actually start winter steelhead December 1 of, say, 23, and then it goes over into the next year where most of the steelhead will be spawning in the year of 2024. We're going to look at that review, and then forecasts are 2024 and 2025. How many fish are going to be coming back this next season starting in December? And then, of course, the potential fisheries. And then I'll turn it over to the actual experts. Go ahead, Erin.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Erin Whitcop, and I'm the district fish biologist for the Willapa Bay. All right. First, we'd like to go through, these are wild steelhead run size since 2001. And you can see that our wild fish returning are on the y-axis and the year is on the x-axis. And in the past several years, we've had a positive trend with our wild steelhead that are returning. And particularly in the last 2 years, the returns have been above our escapement goal. Specifically, we were forecasting 4,085 fish to return to the Willapa Bay. And what we actually saw was many more fish, with 4,945 fish returning. And we're predicting for next year a similar run size with 4,923 fish. I also wanted to point out that there are several hatchery programs in the Willapa Bay, in the Nacelle and the Willapa Rivers. And on average, in the past 5 years, 1,545 hatchery steelhead have returned to the hatchery rack, and 271 hatchery steelhead have been harvested. So there are available hatchery steelhead in the Willapa Bay system that are not being harvested currently. And as for some of our fishery proposals, for this past year, we had selected year rules, 1 single point barbless hook, and main stem closures on March 31st. For this upcoming year, we're proposing very similar regulations with single point barbless hook, March 31st closure, and selected gear rules throughout, except we are proposing that on the Willapa and Nacelle rivers, those two hatchery systems, we are proposing that to allow the use of bait in the month of December only. And we targeted that window because that is a time where many hatchery fish are returning and few wild fish are in the system. So this could be a time where we could increase hatchery harvest in order to combat high levels of gene flow that we've been observing, levels that are above our statewide steelhead management plan goal of 2%. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Mike Scharf.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us. I am the district fisheries biologist with the pleasure of dealing with the Queets, Clearwater, Quinault, and Grays Harbor systems. And thank you, Aaron, for kind of introducing us into the what we saw last year and what we expect this year. So if you can go to the next slide, please. These chart graphs are all the same, pretty much. We're showing some recent trends in our populations. And in the Queets River, much like Willapa Bay, we did see an increase in population in the last couple of years. For instance, we had a forecast last year of 4150. The escapement to the gravel was 3,962. So pretty close to what was forecasted. There are some harvest in there from the tribal fisheries, so it was probably pretty close to the actual forecast. This year's forecast is 3,000 or 4,345, and there is hatchery production on the Salmon River, and they're expecting almost 1,800 fish to come back. So what does that mean for this coming year? If we go to the next slide. Remember, we were closed last year in the Queets system, Clearwater, and the small piece of the Salmon River that we manage. I have to be determined in here because we are currently in communication with the Quinault tribe, and really I don't want to put anything down on paper at this time until we get further discussion with them. But there are some opportunities that we're thinking about. Salmon River is a piece that has hatchery production on it. So at this time, we're more interested to hear what you guys think about the Queets Clearwater systems and certainly what our tribal co-managers are thinking. Next, the Upper Quinault. Oop, can we go back 2 slides? Oh, we're missing the Upper Quinault. It went away. That's okay. We've seen a pretty good return of fish to the Upper Quinault. Somehow we lost the.
Sorry, Mike.
There it is. Although there's some fluctuation in the population there, it's been pretty steady. You'll see it's above. Oh, I forgot to mention the escapement goal. I'll cover that later in the Queets. The escapement goal is 1,200 fish to the upper basin. So we've had a pretty good return into the Upper Quinault. Last year we forecasted 1870, and we had about 1680 come back with some of those fish that aren't accounted for in the run size going to tribal harvest. But that was the escapement. 1,682 made it to the gravels. Forecast for this season is 2260, so a little bit above the goal. So there's certainly some opportunity there. And I did include a forecast for the Quinault River or Lake Quinault Net Pen program. The prediction is 1944 fish are coming back. Some of those may find their way, find their way into the upper basin. So things that we're looking at there, if we move to the next slide. Again, last year, if you remember, we were closed. And much like the Queets, conversation with the Quinault tribe is very important. So we want to make sure that we have good communication and conversation with them before we kind of put things down in paper. But also looking forward to hearing what you guys think about opportunities in the Quinault system. Next, as we move south, we jump into the Hump Tulips Basin. This population hasn't been doing quite as well as we kind of hope. Didn't see quite the increase that we've seen in other populations on the coast, but we've had a couple of years of kind of an upward trend in the population. We had a forecast of 1,343 last year and an escapement of 1,200 fish. And that is actually the run size because there was no harvest last year. And we have a forecast this year of 1,482. It is a little bit higher than what we've seen in the last couple of years. I think some of that can be explained by the age structure of fish that we saw come back. Quite a few age 4 fish, 2 salt fish, which could translate into a bunch of 3 salt fish this next year. There's also a hatchery program there, early timed. We had 685 return to the rack last year. We have a forecast this year of 950, and I have a 5-year average catch of 178. So there are hatchery fish in the system. As we move to the next slide, again, we were closed last year. So we know that there are hatchery fish coming back, and we have provisions in the wild steelhead management plan that allows us opportunity to go after hatchery fish. So how could we do that this year? Some of the ideas that we put out there are maybe some closure areas and some maybe early closure time periods. So closed above 101, maybe close all fisheries by the end of February. So a couple of things that we're thinking about in the hump tulips system. Next. Thank you. So in the Chehalis, population has been kind of concerning for a while. We've seen now a couple of years in a row of fairly good return. Well, I won't say fairly good, but returns that are in the positive side. We had a forecast last year of 71.48 and an actual return of 8,534. It's been a while since this population has actually exceeded the forecast, so a very promising look there. We do have a forecast this year of 9,797. This is certainly a forecast that's kind of in a response to a fairly large number of those 4-year-old fish, those 2 salts, which generally translates into a fairly large 3 salt 5-year-old fish the next year. And with those 4-year-olds as traditionally the predominant age group that comes back, I think this forecast, although we need to be a little cautious, is kind of showing that relationship. So a few more fish forecasted to come back. And we had 5,228 steelhead returned to the hatchery racks this last year. And we have a forecast this year of 4,424. That number is a little bit low because we've seen that the return per release from our hatchery programs has been kind of declining a little bit. So a little bit of concern there, but we have a 5-year average catch pre-closure of about 5,000 fish. So certainly there are some opportunities there. And as we go to the next slide, again, remembering that we were closed last year. So some of the things that we're thinking about, and I got to say this now, and probably I'll say it later, we've spent the last 4 years really digging into looking at risk assessments, impact analysis, and a lot of things. And it's put us into a good position, I think, to kind of move forward with some opportunity. So with that said, some of the things we're looking at are opening hatchery systems and maybe some closures in other areas, and really look at our December coho opportunity. And I'll let you know too that we have creel monies available to monitor much of what we're proposing to do. And with that, we can certainly monitor our PHOS and our impacts and have a really close eye on what's happening out there. So with that said, I know there was a lot there, but a lot to provide, but it's time to pass my torch on to Jennifer Whitney.
Thank you, Mike. I'm Jennifer Whitney. I'm the district biologist for the North Coast, including the Hoh and the Quillayute. And let's see, next slide, Erin. The Quillayute had the best run size since 2012, with over 11,000 fish returning to the Quillayute system. The forecast was for just over 9,000 fish, so we exceeded our expectation there. Next year's forecast is lower than last year's actual run size, but higher than last year's forecast. For hatchery forecast, we anticipate about 4,000 fish coming back next year. The 5-year average catch is just about 624. Next slide, please. As you recall, last year we implemented selective gear rules and had main stem closures March 31st through e-regs. We also targeted areas with restricted fishing from a boat, the upper Bogashiel and Klawa, as well as the Solduck above the hatchery ramp. What we're looking for next year is discussion on providing more opportunity on hatchery fish on the lower Bogashiel and Klawa, especially in the month of December during the hatchery run, with the April fishery to be determined depending on conversations in season with co-managers. Next slide. The Hoh saw the largest run that we've recorded with over 6,855 is the run size for last year, with the majority of those fish escaping to the spawning ground. That way exceeded our forecast of 3,389. Next year's forecast is for 4,287. And while we don't have a hatchery forecast yet, it's not going to be a super large number. So that's to be determined. Next slide. Last year on the Hoh River, we had selective gear rules, 1 single point barbless hook. We did not have the hatchery 3 fish bonus limit, and we had main stem closures in the month of April. As you recall, we also conducted a no fishing from a boat study, looking at impacts of kind of alternating days above and below the Hoh Oxbow area with where and when it was allowed to fish from a boat. One of the things we are discussing is whether to repeat that no fishing from a boat study or to increase opportunity for fishing from a boat. And that's one of the things we're looking for conversation about tonight. The April fishery on the Hoh is also to be determined depending on conversations with co-managers in season. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Evan Boer, to talk about preliminary results from the no fishing from a boat study.
All right. Thank you very much, Jenny. And my name is Evan Boer. I'm the Freshwater Fisheries Policy Coordinator for DFW, and I'll be reviewing some preliminary results from our work to evaluate the efficacy of recent steelhead regs prohibiting fishing from a boat. And this work is a collaboration between myself, Colt Hawley, Jenny, and many other members of both Fish Management and Science Division here at DFW. Next slide, please. Okay, so the focus of this study is on evaluating the effectiveness of a recent rule change prohibiting fishing from a boat. And our primary question asks, does prohibiting angling from boats reduce wild steelhead total catch and mortality in a catch and release fishery? To address this question, we first proposed a special set of regulations during the 2023 Coastal Steelhead Townhall meeting series, and that set up the framework for our evaluation approach. During this fishery, regulations were put into place to alternate the use of a boat rule in a systematic fashion across both time and area. The table shows a simplified view of how the rules were set up in different sections of the Hoh River. In this case, to make it kind of simplified, we're just using sections, the lower and middle Hoh, sections 1 and 2. And the rules were set up to vary both between these two sections in space and then also in time. And you can see that in the table where we have for a subset of days, Monday through Tuesday. In one section, that means that fishing from a boat is allowed. And in the other section, it means that that is not allowed. And so by having those switch in a systematic and standard fashion, we're able to kind of smooth out the implementation of this rule over time. And so we're considering days where the normal rules are in place to be our control group, and the days where no fishing from a boat were allowed to be our treatment group for the purposes of this study. We then applied a standard roving creel across the fishery, and this allowed us to take measurements of angler catch and effort across both control and treatment groups. By allocating the rule in this kind of systematic fashion across space and time, we're able to collect observations while also accounting for seasonal variation and factors like stream flow. The main components of the study focus on estimating fishery catch with sub-objectives to compare catch rate, effort, and ultimately total catch of wild steelhead between these control and treatment groups. To date, our efforts have focused on the first piece of this, evaluating angler catch rates, and that's where I'll take a deeper dive on the next slide. Okay, and so in our evaluation of angler catch rates, our aim is to evaluate the effect of the boat fishing regulation on average catch rate, which you could think of as angler success, or the number of fish they catch per hour. And we're aiming to do this while controlling for different factors that we measure in the course of angler interviews that we would consider to be angler trip characteristics, and also environmental factors. The results shown here are preliminary and subject to revision as we work towards a final model. Just want to get that out there. The basic setup of the model used angler interview data to model catch rate in units of fish per hour. And again, you can think of this as angler success. And I will walk through this plot for you guys to help illustrate some of our key preliminary findings. And so this plot is showing differences in effects across some of our different groups measured in our data. And on the y-axis, you can see the response variable, and this is catch per unit effort in fish per hour. The panes on left are representing data where boat fishing was open and allowed, and the panes on the right represent our control group where the rule was in place and boat fishing was prohibited. On the x-axis, we have three different fishing methods represented by bank fishing, fishing from the bank when using a boat for transport, and then fishing from a boat. And so hitting on kind of the first point of our preliminary findings, we really see that methods matter. And here we see a pretty clear effect on catch rate. And if you can imagine that bank fishing is our base condition over on the left-hand side of each of the panes, we can see an increased kind of level of success in anglers that use a boat for transport. And then you can see that anglers that fish from a boat exhibit substantially higher catch rates than the other two groups. This pattern is pretty similar across both the lower and the middle Hoh sections. And so here we see some evidence that fishing from a boat is indeed a highly effective fishing method in terms of angler catch rate. A key follow-up to this is looking at what happens when we take away that option of fishing from a boat. And interestingly, we see some evidence, particularly if you look in the middle section, so kind of the middle panes of the plot, we can see that anglers are at least partially able to compensate for this when you take away the ability to fish from a boat, such that bank fishing and using a boat for transport do become more effective when you take away that option to fish from a boat. So importantly, these results give us a sense for some factors that impact angler catch rate, but they do not give us a final answer on the effect of the regulation on total steelhead catch. And so that really tees up our next steps for the work. And that's where we need to be updating our existing creel modeling tools to account for these special regulations during the 2023-24 season. And that will let us compare total angler effort and total catch between the control and treatment groups. And that's what will get us to our ability to address the primary question of the study, what the impacts are on final catch of steelhead. So with that, I will pass on the torch to, I believe, Rob.
Thanks for that, Evan. Good work. Really looking forward to seeing some numbers down the road when we get some CRC data back and kind of compare that to what the creel surveys shown.
You bet. You bet. And I guess I do want to, if anyone wants to take a deeper dive with us on what we found so far, my email address was in the slide, and happy to follow up and dig into things with anyone who wants to kind of look under the hood of what we're doing. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Hey, I want to apologize. I guess there was a bad link sent out. Sorry about that. I think we've hooked some of the folks up so they chime in, but I want to tell everybody too that this PowerPoint will be posted. And so if you miss some of it, or you want to share it with somebody, direct them towards this PowerPoint link and comment on it. Give some of the experts a call or an email, and we'll follow up. We'll follow up with you. So sorry about that. Just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, and I want to
so-
apologize too. I think this is on me. I thought an email should have went out to everybody asking to re-register, but it sounds like some folks didn't get it. There was an issue with the original one set up. So I apologize. I've been trying to send out links to folks that I've heard haven't been in. That's on me, guys. I apologize.
Oh, that's right, Leah. Hey, and then also we're going to go through this whole PowerPoint, and don't hesitate if you have questions. We can go back to any slide you guys want to look at and ask questions about. So and keep putting some stuff in the chat. We're going to record them all. In fact, just before this, I'd have to say that, you know, in the last week or so, our communications folks sent a link so I could look at a bunch of past for the last 3 years comments and a bunch of other input, like 800 some comments. I didn't get through them all, but pretty amazing stuff. There's a lot of real golden nuggets in there, I'd say. So, all right, so now we're going to go through the Coastwide summary real quick here. Next slide, please. So this is a review, kind of what we've already heard from individual watersheds. 2023-24 review, preliminary run sizes. So if you go from left to right, you see the Willapa River. And like I said, this is just a summary of what we've already heard. Predicted run size was 4,085. Actual run size 4,900 or so. A little bit over the goal, which is good. We're moving in the right direction. With an actual escapement is 4847. You can see the Chehalis there. You can see the ones in the red or salmon color are below the goals. I won't go through each one. One of interest is the Hoh. You can see we predicted 3389 and we ended up with about 6855. Well over the escapement goal. We can go back to this if somebody wants to later. Let's go to the next slide, please. So now we get to the nitty gritty here, the slide that everybody's been waiting for. What do we expect? Come back to the river. Again, this is a summary. Willapa River, run to the river is 4,900 fish or so, 700 above the escapement goal, leaves us with about 717 sport impact. See the Chehalis has a little bump. Hump tulips is low in red. Harbor and Queets has a few sport impact available. The Queets we're still in negotiation with. Communications with the tribe. We're looking forward to some feedback real soon. And the Hoh is looking better. Quillayute's looking not too bad. Remembering that this is just kind of a start. We pulled a lot of triggers to get to where we're at. We have some positive outcomes so far, but we're not out of the woods yet. So now I'll turn it over to Kelly and with what the future might look like.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and everybody. So if you were able to tune in to the Fish and Wildlife Commission Fish Committee meeting early on Monday morning, you saw this slide. You might have also seen this slide in Andy Walgamont's Northwest Sportsman post. But just to share with you all some of the things that are bouncing around between our ears in terms of fisheries considerations for this year. I won't read all of these, but man, we really want to target these hatchery fish during their return timing. We're also looking at some early closures. We want to expand our fishing from a boat opportunity. We're thinking about gear and we're thinking about bait and no bait. We also want to make sure we provide that salmon opportunity where we've got enough steelhead abundance to allow for it. And then we've also got creel and monitoring on our brains in terms of not only the Hoh and that study, whether or not we continue the study, but also down south in the Chehalis. So these are the things that we're thinking about. They're all things that shouldn't be new to you all, because they're all things that you have said to us in the past. And with that, let's go to the next slide. And the caveat here with this next slide, I don't want anybody to feel like these are fully baked. Again, we got a lot of conversations we need to have with our co-managers, but just to kind of summarize everything and let you all know how we're kind of initially thinking about these various systems and what might be possible. And again, I'm not gonna go through all of these, but just to, for example, the Willapa River hatchery, system. We want to capitalize on the opportunity to get at those hatchery fish in the month of December during their return timing. So we're talking about allowing bait, and then maybe in that January, February, and maybe even into March time frame, going into our rules with single point barbless hooks, and again, going down through all of these, you can kind of see how we're thinking about things, and again, just want to be really clear. This stuff should not be considered by you or anybody else as fully baked at this point in time. Again, we've got a lot of conversations we need to have with our co-managers. And we'll come back to this slide here when we go to the Q&A, so you've got a reference point for your comments and your suggestions. But with that, let's maybe bounce to the next slide, Aaron. Yeah, here's where we're looking for you all to engage, give us some feedback on what you've heard tonight. And again, Leah's going to go through the regs or the rules here for this, just to remind folks about what we're looking for in terms of the Q&A.
Yeah, so some Zoom reminders. You can ask your question by raising your hand. If you're calling in, you can raise a hand by dialing *9 on your phone. Or if you're calling in from a computer, you can find the hand icon at the bottom of your screen. To speak, you will need to unmute yourself by using the mute button on your computer or mobile device, or enter *6 if you're calling from a landline. You can type additional questions in the chat. However, we may not be able to respond to all questions. A record of written questions will be made available to staff. If you have a technical issue during the webinar, please drop us a note in the chat and we will help you through it. Questions in written format are also accepted at the online portal at wdfw.wa.gov/coastalsteelhead. Looks, we've got a few hands up. First hand is Andy. Andy, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question here. I guess it's not much of a question, but more what I'd like to see as far as regulations go. See some real positive signs there as far as the fish numbers go, and experienced some real positive fishing last year. But what I'd like to see in place, and it looks like there's opportunity for this, is the widest range we can of rivers open, and trying to keep consistency across those rivers as far as regulations go, because it really seems like there's a concentration of angling for specific techniques. You saw plenty of pictures and experiences on the Hoh River in those areas allowing boats where there's bumper to bumper parking from the gravel bars out to the road. And that can't really be good for the fishery or the, angler experience. And meanwhile, we have, rivers down in the Willapa area that, while there are positive signs fish numbers wise, those rivers still average in the upper hundreds for returns. And let's say our assessments are incorrect, there's opportunity to have over impact on those fisheries. What I'd like to see is all of those listed rivers open to some extent. I know that there's going to be there's negotiations with the co-manager, but with the exception of those targeted hatchery fisheries, which I do like seeing your proposals there, is to keep a consistent no fishing from a boat across anything that's open, so we can spread out the fisheries and give those fish that are returning those areas a respite where they can't be targeted by, anglers. I mean, looks like there's definitely evidence of that in your Hoh River study, and especially with areas like the Kalawa and the Bogachil that you listed there. They're small rivers, easily fished. All of them can be cast across. You're giving those fish where you can't actually access those areas to rest, and then the fisheries in the Willapa Bay are much smaller even compared to those rivers. And sorry, that kind of lost what my next point was, but keeping everything consistent so that we're not concentrating our impacts on those rivers that allow boats, and then keeping those regulations in place for several years. We can monitor them instead of trying to change it every year. We keep a wide range of rivers open and monitor that under conservative regulations to see what impacts we're having. Thank you. And that's my proposal for what I'd like to see this year fishing wise.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that. And I should have mentioned when I was going through this table, when you see SGR there, that's shorthand for selective gear rules. So I just want to be clear about that. But thanks, Andy, for your input. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. Our next hand is from Patrick. Patrick, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Patrick.
Hey, super solid work. I know this is definitely a marathon, not a race, and you guys are doing great work. I just want to give my opinion. In my opinion, I would take a hard, close look at that hump tulips regulation. I think we should back that down to the middle of January and kind of just focus on strictly hatchery fish. If we can't get the Chehalis main stem open, I don't think the hump tulip should be open, especially if we're dealing with less fish on that river. We're coming to a point here where we're starting to creep out of this hole a little bit, and as much as I want to go fishing there, I think we just need to just kind of put it in low gear there a little bit and watch it close and really pick on those hatchery fish. It's also, if we have the funds, I really do think we need to get some boat studies and get some department guys in the boats or on the bank in the Chehalis Basin and get this data if we're gonna have an opportunity to be on the water and really hammer down on getting some critical data to support our future here. Things are looking up, and we got to just keep on the throttle and get the best available science to sustain this fishery and not get ourselves in this hole in 10 years from now or 5 years from now. So again, great job. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Our next hand is from Wes. Wes, go ahead.
Good evening. A couple of things. One, in terms of what I would like to see is restoration of some additional boat days on the Hoh. I would be for the study, but I would say let's pair it with a year where we actually have to curtail opportunity again. Prioritize opening the hatchery access on the Chehalis trips, and get the Queets open. You didn't really address the issue of the Queets escapement goal and where we're at on actually getting one that's agreed to by the co-managers. But if the tribe's gonna fish beyond subsistence and ceremonial, then it needs to be open for sport anglers as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Wes. Our next hand is from Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Hey guys, thank you very much for all your hard work. Appreciate it. Couple of things. I like all the stuff for more on the Hoh and the Quillayute system. I think obviously we've done really good in there. I think everything kind of stays as is. But I definitely think the allowing bait in the lower Bogashil and the Kalawa is warranted for those hatchery fish. And I think from the numbers we've seen over the last couple of years, I think we ought to be able to do that without having any impacts on those wild fish. So I think that's super important. I'm in a big favor of continuing the boat study on the Hoh. If you felt like you could give us more boat access on the Hoh, great. I would say just keep it in the lower Hoh below Oxbow and continue just the 3 days a week above Oxbow. But if that screws up your study, then I would just say keep the study as is. I think there's a lot more information in that study, Evan. I think you did a great job, but we had a meeting earlier in this year that was a little more in depth than that. And I also talked to Hannah, and I came up with some pretty interesting facts that we didn't share tonight that I think are pretty important. So I'd like to talk to you at some point in time to bring those to light and let everybody see that too, because there are some stuff there that we didn't mention tonight that I think are pretty big deals. So, but I'm into that for sure. I also think it's super important that if we can somehow get the, if we can get the Upper Quinault and some of the Chehalis systems going, I think that's also going to change a little bit because some of the folks that no longer had access to those streams were all coming north. Now they're going to have access to those streams. You probably aren't going to get as much pressure north. So that's going to change that a little bit. And then, yeah, I think that was it. I think you guys are doing a great job. I appreciate it. It looks like the numbers are starting to move. So continue what you're doing, but like, try to give us as much as you can for some boat fishing and wherever we can get some stuff open, but let's not go overboard. We're actually moving things in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Our next hand is from Larry. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So just piling on here, appreciation for the last few years, guys. It's been an uphill battle for sure. It's nice to be in a better spot here to at least have some conversations about meaningful opportunity. So one of the things I'm struggling with a little bit, Kelly, and I know you mentioned we're still obviously in the early phases of this conversation and lots of work still to be done, but from just an optics standpoint, I'm curious as to how the decisions were made to list closures in the Chehalis system beginning in March. When I look at the preseason forecast, we're about 140% more than we were preseason in 2023-24 this year. Looks like and the accuracy of last year's forecast, we under forecast by quite a bit. We were about 120% of the return was 120% of the preseason forecast last year. One thing that would be helpful, I think, for us to be able to look at this and really better understand kind of where we're at is maybe a modeling exercise in anticipated encounters. We have about 600 fish to work with, it looks like to me on paper anyways. So I'm very hopeful. Bob mentioned it a second ago. I think another gentleman mentioned it. If we close in March in the Chehalis system, that will certainly result in significant efforts shift to other areas. And, if we have an opportunity to keep that fishery open through March, which, I mean, it sure looks like it on paper, I would really hope we could consider that just because it's a large system. It's going to absorb a lot of that effort. And by no means am I suggesting we should fish right up to the edge of our escapement objectives. But I still think there might be some opportunity there for us to get that season open through the end of March. Appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. We'll take a peek at it.
Thanks, Larry. Our next hand is from Jess. Jess, go ahead.
Evening. The forecasted increase in abundance on some of these systems is really exciting to see, and we really want to acknowledge that, WDFW's efforts to lean into implementation of the SSMP is really starting to show a return on investment. Meeting those management objectives is really important and something that we really hope to see continue. And we know that the management decisions in recent seasons have been really hard, but you guys made the right decisions, and the resources really showing us that. So we really appreciate it. I want to say thank you. You should give yourselves a pat on the back. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that we're faced with modeling conditions with high variability and very large swings in abundance. And so, even for steelhead, we all know that we're facing unprecedented variability. And while we're really excited to see those modeled forecasts for this season, we're also going to continue our strong encouragement that the department continue implementation of the SSMP. We really want to see how the proposed fisheries will impact that diversity, productivity, distribution, and abundance for each of the fisheries that are being proposed. A sort of stoplight approach of seasons past really provides that clear example of whether or not those proposed fisheries are really meeting those SSMP criteria. And I think we all know, right, that those long-term trends for OP steelhead are still not looking good. And so rather than swing back and forth with a myriad of regulations from those season-to-season approaches, just sort of advocating that you focus on that long-term approach that really provides the confidence that the fisheries we put in place for any one season will achieve both the department's conservation mission as well as the goal that you're hearing from all of the fisher folk that are on the call here tonight. We're really trying to work to rebuild those populations, again, by prioritizing the sustainability of these fish. And again, thinking about that productivity, diversity, and distribution and abundance as your guiding principles as you develop these fishery seasons. So again, really appreciate all the work you guys are putting in. We know it's long slogs, and hope to continue our conversations as y'all work to shape the fishery in the season ahead.
Thank you, Jess. Our next hand is from Reve. Reve, go ahead.
Hi, thank you guys. I did have a question on some of the numbers that I received from Brian McLaughlin, who wasn't able to make the call. And I said I'd try and bring them up. The numbers for the Upper Quinault, it's not half of the wild steelhead availability. Why was that less? Can you guys hear me?
Went down.
Could we get you to repeat the question?
Yeah, so for all the rivers, we normally split the wild steelhead availability over the escapement goal, but for the Upper Quinault, it's not. We have a less ability to, sport impact limit.
Hang on a sec as we jump to that slide.
Thanks much. And actually, the overall it would be better.
Slide. I think it was
towards the end.
A slide up further. Yeah, in the summary slides. It's down lower. Okay. Sorry, as we kind of work our way through the slides so we can get to the right one.
Sport impact,
right there.
Sport impact slide. There you
so
go.
you're asking
why isn't it the sport impact limit 530?
Oh, I see. The sport impact you're saying is 113, which is not half of the basically 1,060 fish available. Shoot, I think that might be just an error in the spreadsheet that we didn't catch.
Okay, and the second Upper Quinault
and if I can address the Upper Quinault,
the change in escapement goal.
There are some fish available up there. It's primarily a wild fish catch and release fishery with some hatchery fish that could go up there. So certainly we are looking for opportunity in there. I think we'll look into this spreadsheet to make sure that the number gets updated, but that probably should be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 500 impacts available. So sorry that we didn't catch that.
Okay, and the second, on the Upper Quinault, the escapement goal in previous years has been 1,600. Has that changed?
So we think that that was a mistake that was written in that we didn't catch. We had communication with the Quinault tribe on that, and we both have an agreement that it is actually 1,200 fish, not 1,600 fish. So in the past, I think we weren't able to catch that in time to address it, and so we're correcting that this year to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Perfect, great. Those were two of his big questions. And then I just wanted to reiterate that I think that, you know, we have been restricted heavily on the Quillayute and the Hoh and haven't had any issues with our run sizes coming under. I think there's a lot of opportunity and missed opportunity in the past that I feel that if we can get back to regulation, you know, our regulation book rules, there's no reason to continue the Hoh boat study. I think that that can better be utilized on a different river system if, you know, you want to do more fishing or less, you know, more opportunity for fishing from a boat on a river that might be closed. That's way different than the Hoh. It's a pretty distinct river for fishing from the bank.
Thank you, Reve. Our next hand, sorry, I saw Jenny pop on. I wasn't sure she wanted to say something. Our next hand is from Thomas. Thomas, go ahead.
All right, that's me. All right. Well,
that's you.
Thanks for putting this together. My main comment is on the Queets system. We really need to have a agreed upon management program for escapement and harvest on the system. And currently, as you guys I'm sure are well aware of, the department and the tribe has two different numbers, and that allows them to fish and stops us from fishing completely. And that needs to be something that is sorted out and addressed. And we have to have an agreed number. And it's really ridiculous that it's illegal for me to fish the river unless I pay somebody to take me on it. And I can fish the salmon river for abundant hatchery steelhead. And I can even hire a guide to take me up the Clearwater in a jet sled and fish for steelhead, but I can't take my drift boat down from my property on the river and fish it legally. And so there is a big issue with the management on the Queets system right now. And we need to agree upon an escapement goal with the tribe and have a shareholder participation in it. And so that's my number one thing that I want to bring up here, because it's really not right that I'm living around all these fish and I have to pay somebody to be legally able to engage with these fish. It's weird. It's not cool. And beyond that, the other thing is, you know, we have other hatchery programs like the Skookumchuck and the Hump Tulips that we could participate in without having any significant impact on the wild fish in the systems. I really don't understand the science behind not allowing us to harvest hatchery fish at terminal locations before any significant amount of wild fish return. And there's not even significant creel data to show encounters around those areas at that time of year. So there's a lot of political stuff that I think is getting in the way of good science and healthy fisheries that needs to be addressed. So first off, come up with a hatchery, or not a hatchery, a management program with the Quinault tribe on the Queets system that is agreed to. Second, open up terminal hatchery fisheries on the Hump Tulips and the Skookumchuck. And as a final statement, I would say, boat fishing, well, it may not be for everyone, but it should be allowed. And if our impact is so significant, I would allow boat fishing on limited days, but to remove boat anglers from the river basically takes out a huge percentage of sportsmen. Some of them are elderly, some of them can't bank fish anymore. Some of them just like to use the techniques that they've learned from fishing from a boat, and they should be able to fish from a boat. And if we can't fish from a boat, I don't know why anybody should fish. Maybe we should just have a shorter season or limited days. But you can't, in this whole period of inclusion, and everybody should be included in everything from all casts of life, maybe boat fishermen should be included too. So I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Thomas. Our next hand is from Reve. Oh, I wonder if that was a residual hand. It might be a residual hand. Reve? Oh, I'm guessing it was. Okay, next hand, Dwayne. Dwayne, go ahead.
All right, there we go. Thanks for putting this on once again, year in and year out. You continue to come with some really fantastic data tracking this. I know I probably bother Mike far too often and pick his brain on how things are rolling through the season. And it was encouraging towards the end of last season to see some of the numbers, i.e. in the Wainuchi fish trap and things like that. And so we go into this with encouraging numbers. Of course, we're all paying attention to the preseason forecasting, and one thing that stands out is obviously the Chehalis at 490 for sport impact, and I'll pull that back up if you guys are clicking on it. So the 490 over sport on the sport impact. Now, last year, with the detailed program you guys worked effortlessly to implement, and I called it a micromanaged approach, which was completely on board with and tried to promote that via the show and other venues, and give you the due diligence and support and how you wanted to approach that fishery, because we had never seen anything like that. And based on the run projections last year, the sport impact was going to be 214 fish, I believe. Now, the 490 represents, I'm assuming, my mortality impact for recreational. Is that what we're saying? Yes. Okay. And is that basin wide? That includes the entire Chehalis Basin, all tributaries combined, to come up with that 490 impact?
So yeah, if I can jump in real quick, it's basically a proportion of that the run size forecast, and then dividing it up, the available fish, then dividing it up by half, and then we get to give some of those to the Chehalis tribe. So
yeah,
these are what we have based on the forecasted run size.
Oh, the 1197 is the number that's over the escapement goal, which 50% of that would be 598. So we're 100 or so fish off on that. And I'm not going to split hairs. The fact that we have, a larger number over escapement goal in the Chehalis Basin than we've seen in years is encouraging. But I don't know. It was mentioned on a previous caller that one of the other North Coast rivers was a little skewed as well. So the 490, the actual 50% margin would be 598. I just want everybody to understand that is our anticipated recreational impact. Whereas last year, when we walked through it month by month to look at the probable recreational impact, it was down as low as 214, but we're fishing on more fish this year, so I guess we would surmise that it would be a larger impact based on the run size. Are you guys using, is it strictly a percentage that you guys break out, or are there considerations on effort in amount of daily effort in what historical data might show to come up with these numbers?
So I'll go back to the 490. We do share both with the Quinault and the Chehalis tribe.
That's right. Okay.
We don't get the full, 50%. But that's what we can impact up to if we kind of look at what's available and don't go over the goal. Certainly, we don't want to take a too big of a step, and so looking at how can we get after some of our hatchery fish is kind of our first priority. How can we do that? And we all know that we haven't gotten a lot of creel data specific to the Chehalis and the Hump Tulips Basin during our winter steelhead fisheries. So the first step is to collect that kind of data that you were talking about. What kind of effort are we seeing? When do we start seeing encounter rates shift from predominantly hatchery fish to wild fish? Those are the types of information that we really don't have yet, but we can do some math to look at that. What's the typical run timing by month? So we use all of that to look at, maybe when do we think that we're starting to have a cost risk analysis that says, fishing into X month, we're encountering too many wild fish in relationship to hatchery fish. So at some point, you're going to hit that where you're no longer removing hatchery fish at a beneficial rate as wild fish. So looking at all of that stuff.
I'll just finish up with one more question. So last season, you guys were in position with monies allocated from legislation and boots on the ground, creel sampling. You were going to be very aggressive on it, more than we'd ever seen, to start collecting that data. Are you in position this year with additional folks, boots on the ground, where the money's allocated in this year's budget to get out there and collect this data if, in fact, we do get to go fishing?
Yes, I do.
That's fantastic. Okay, I tip my cap to you because it's heading in the right direction. I want to see it to continue to move that way, and recreational anglers assisting in data collection, if that's the goal and we can bring this together, is a success going into it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dwayne. Our next hand is from Ed. Ed, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody. Awesome work, like everybody's been saying. It's nice to see some fresh faces here in the town halls. It definitely feels like something's changed. I don't know what, but really impressive work. Really appreciate all the transparency, and it's really nice to see that a lot of the systems are starting to see some recovery in their escapement. Especially the Hoh, shocking, almost 7,000 fish. That's incredible. And it's but also we want to keep this going. And as we know, it's going through a long-term decline in the run sizes. So even though we've got a slight blip uptake in the numbers now, that doesn't mean that we're out of the woods quite yet. Even though that's how some people might feel. This is only 1 year. We still got several more years to see if this is a long-term trend or if it's just a one-time occurrence. Hopefully not. Hopefully the numbers keep going. But it's the thing that I noticed is that the Hoh, that had such a great increase in the return, also has had pretty tight regulations the last several years. It's had no fishing from the boat pretty much entirely the last couple of years, and then this past year we had the experiment that we keep talking about, and we saw the numbers that came from the results of that. So just my thought is that if we really are concerned about the long-term decline and we are faced with unprecedented variability, and we acknowledge that catch and release impact is a big factor in the decline, then it just makes sense to, like the gentleman said earlier, to expand the open rivers with no boat fishing where the runs are really declined, and then even on the rivers where the runs are not so declined, we could have longer seasons. We could get April back if the boat fishing is limited to, say, the area, limited out of the areas where the fish primarily spawn. So they're not hammered as hard as they usually get when the boats can fish over them. An example of this is, say, like the Deschutes River. The Deschutes River in Oregon is an incredibly popular river. It gets a tremendous amount of people fishing on it, and it has had no fishing from boat regulations for a very long time. It's almost never closed. Whenever the river closes, it makes the news. And it's had these regulations for a long time, even though it's got jet boats and it gets really crowded. So, do we want to save the fish and revert this long-term decline? Or do we just want to make it easy all the time? I'm all for boat fishing for them if we know that there's enough of them and we could get there. But if the runs are still suffering, they should get as much of a chance as they can to spawn. And that's all I got to say. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ed. Our next hand is from Ty. Ty, go ahead.
Hi, guys. I want to reinforce everyone's comments, how positive this is to have all you guys involved and all your hard work, and how hard it must be to listen to all of us form our opinions on basically what you do every day in and out. So a couple points that were made earlier, I'd like to reinforce from Larry and Bob that it would be really nice to see some streamline in the regulations, not just for the everyday angler so they understand. And from another standpoint that I hear this over and over and over, that a lot of anglers that have sacrificed being able to fish think that they're going to get something more in the future. And I think it's kind of important to understand that the reason for these fishes to decline may have had nothing to do with anglers in the first place. So just keep that in mind from a standpoint of the future regulations. And it would be really nice, like Larry said, if we could push things back until at least the end of February or March for the closures to spread out the effort. And then that would lower the impacts on any catch and release on wild fish. Last point for all those worried about the conservation of this fish, WFW has taken in that we're having a 10% impact on these fish, and there's a 5-time bumper on that number, right? There's a buffer of basically 5 times what catch and release mortality that we're seeing on these fish anywhere else. So thanks again for your time, guys. Oh, one last note. Sorry. Maybe in the future it would be helpful if there were some error rates associated in the run forecasts, and basically based on those error rates, there'd be a sliding scale for the estimated escapement currently versus run forecast. So potentially, like they do in Alaska, they use a sliding scale. So when fish are on higher abundance, the escapements actually are higher. That's the goal, would be moving higher. And then when it's low abundance, like we've seen in the past 4 years, the sliding scale goes down. And again, the co-managers may not like this, but anyways, that's my points. Thanks, guys, for all your hard work.
Thank you, Ty. Our next hand is from Bob. Bob, go ahead.
This is kind of for Mike. When the Chehalis system was shut down 4 years ago, and prior to most of what we're going through now, the Chehalis was completely open to boats with bait, clean till March 15th every year. And since we closed it, and now we're talking about going back in there fishing, and per the regulation, it looks like we're going to talk about going into single barbus hooks, no bait, and everything. I know preliminarily, when we started talking about this 4 years ago, bait was a really big deal because the catch rates with bait were significantly higher. In the estimation from WDFW. So going into this, looking at this now, and going into this study, are we taking into account the difference in what the Chehalis fishery used to look like as to what it's going to look like now, you know, with no bait and all that stuff? And then if you're talking about using boats in some of that stuff, would it be good to possibly look at boats? And then if you wanted to extend it into March, like Larry was talking about, if you were to go to note boat fishing in March, obviously from the boat study, it shows it cuts back on fish. So is that a way to prolong the fishery a little bit?
Well, we're here to listen to you guys and take notes on your suggestions, and that's certainly what we're going to do. And so I appreciate that, and yeah, I can take a look at it and see where we're going to go. I want to kind of reiterate some of the things that we've heard before. You know, this is first year we think we're going to be able to get back in. Well, we thought we'd get back in last year with a side point, and we don't want to take too big of a chunk. Our goal is to you know, target our hatchery fish. In that's what they're being provided for. So certainly I'm jotting notes real quick here, so I'm going to jot that down and see what it looks like.
Even if you were allowing some boat fishing early and realize that with a boat fishery you have this amount of impacts, and then with a bank fishery only you have this impacts, I think that if you offered some boat fishing and then offered more bank fishing to leave the season open as long as you could do it, that would probably appease a lot of people and keep them at least fishing down there, since they haven't been able to fish for 4 years. So just my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. So we don't have any other hands next. So just a reminder for folks on the phone, *9 to raise your hand. Also the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. It could be a smiley face that says reactions, depending on the version you're using. Okay, that got a few hands. Our next one is Jonathan. Jonathan, go ahead.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, this is Jonathan Stump here, and I just wanted to say thank you for the work that's gone into this. We'll be submitting some comments later when we had a time to review and check over these fishery proposals that you guys have laid out. It's nice to see some additional opportunities in places where we haven't seen them for 4 years, specifically down in the Chehalis and at some of those hatchery programs down there. More importantly, I'd like to take a moment and point to the kind of implementation of the statewide steelhead management plan that was brought up earlier, and build upon that and recognize that currently there's a budget request to the legislature from the agency for $4.8 million, and that's going to be to help implement the coastal steelhead proviso implementation plan that was put together a couple of years ago in the Coastal Steelhead Advisory Group, that has a lot of great kind of modern fisheries management pieces that will hopefully help us kind of get away from this lurching from season to season and, you know, trying to figure out where we can fish at the margins. And I just want to, you know, take this opportunity in this moment to make sure that people are aware of that. And if you have contacts with your legislatures, you know, very soon is going to be the time to bring that up. And then I got a couple questions too, and I think, you know, one of these might be for Evan with regards to the Hoh boat study. I guess maybe go back to one of those slides that you had posted up, if you may. So looking at this here, I was curious if, and maybe this was included and just not mentioned in the short discussion, but did you guys account for, say, different gear types in this study? And then also another piece would be, I guess, guided or non-guided anglers as well.
Gear types, we collect that data in the interviews, but I'm not sure if it was collected at the right kind of categories to be to be fully useful. So that would be a follow-up with Hannah and Jenny to check in on that piece of it in the interview data. And then the guide piece is that is a piece of the model, just not presented at this point in time. But that data is there.
So maybe if I could jump in on that piece, Evan, I think it's important for everybody to understand the purpose of this study wasn't to single out any user group or necessarily any real method, right? Our basic study, our basic question was, what is the efficacy of fishing out of a floating device? And the reason we wanted to ask that question, folks, is because we had some assumptions early on back in 2020, 2021, when we implemented this rule, right? And we were thinking that we were estimating up to about a 50% reduction in encounters on natural origin fish. And we've always wondered about that. So we saw an opportunity last year to test that estimate, and that's what we did. Now, our goal with this study wasn't, like I said, to point to any one user group, but I don't think it's any secret that folks that are on the river every day, guides, are good at what they do. They're really good at what they do, right? But again, I just want to be really clear. The purpose of this study was to challenge our assumptions with regard to our estimates associated with the no fishing out of a floating device regulation, Jonathan.
Okay, I guess that helps. So does I guess if those variables are taken out, does that impact the results of the study, Evan, or I guess?
And the bit of work we've done at this, that doesn't change the take home that you see in this plot in regard to fishing method and the patterns across the different sections and between the different rules, open and closed. So yeah, you can expect in further work that more of those data sets will be included in the model.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And then what's the status of for a couple of years there was a test fishery with a couple test fishers. Is that going to be continuing this year and into the future?
That's a good question that I'm going to look to probably in the Hoh. I'll look to Jenny to see if she has thoughts on that.
I guess we would like to consider the test. We would like to do another year of hiring the test fishers. Last year we had 2 test fishers working in the Hoh. I think a bit of it depends on funding and how funding is allocated. So I guess if possible, we would like to repeat that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our next hand is Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Totally lost my train of thought now is what I actually raised my hand for. Shoot. Oh, I think I wanted to point out there the one thing that I've been on this ever since you guys started these town halls, and I've been involved with managers for a long time. I know that there's a lot of new people that have just started getting into all this stuff and everything. I wanted to point out something about the Hoh. Everybody thinks that the Hoh, we had this miraculous season this last year. And a lot of us are thinking, oh, it's great. But I do want to point out to something that the Hoh, up the last 7 years, we've met our escapement. The previous 15 years, we met our escapement only 50% of the time. So in the last 7 years, we've actually met our escapement, and we are on a slow uphill uphill increase over the last 7 years. So it's not like all of a sudden, miraculously, over the last couple years, and particularly since we've not been fishing the Hoh from a boat or not fishing the Hoh, in these new regs, that this all of a sudden took place. It started 7 years ago, before any of these regs even started. And you can see the increase has slowly been going back up. And so, I don't think it's the result. It's definitely helped with doing what we're doing. I just wanted to point that out. If nobody's really noticed that the Hoh for a long time was up and down, below and above escapement. Now all of a sudden, we're over the last 7 years, we've been meeting our escapement each year. So I just wanted to point that out for people that weren't quite aware that that's actually been happening. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out, Bob.
Yep.
Okay, and once again, that was our last hand. Just a reminder, *9 for those couple of you that are on the phone. We have a hand from Bill. Bill, go ahead. Bill, I just prompted you to unmute. Bill, are you out there? Okay, we'll come back to you, Bill. Reve, go ahead.
Thanks so much. Sorry, I have a crazy toddler in the background, but I just wanted to look at the run size estimates for last year. Did those numbers include recreational fishery impacts already, or is that part of what's being worked out with the tribes?
Reve, for the Hoh and Quillayute, the Hoh does, the Quillayute does not yet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reve. Our next hand is from Ty. Ty, go ahead.
Thanks, guys. I want to carry on with Bob's comments there with regards to the Hoh and wild fish populations in general. I think a lot of people that may not realize that what Bob's saying is steelhead return multiple times, and as these populations recover and become more abundant, up to a quarter of these fish are fish that spawn multiple times. So I just hope that the department is building that into their model forecast, that with these wild fish, with regards, I see that they're predicting even a lower escapement than we saw last year, when a lot of us are probably alluding to the fact that it's in all likelihood, we're going to see more fish this winter. Anyways, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ty. And let's try again. Bill, do you want to unmute?
Thank you. I didn't
Of
see
course.
the button. I didn't see the button off to my left. I have two questions. I have a comment on the Wainuchi Dam and the amount of wild steelhead that are trucked above the dam, and I've been opposed to that for umpteen years. I've gotten the trap report off of that longer than anyone that works for the department, and they used to use my figures when people like Kurt Holt signed on. I think WDFW and Tacoma City Light ought to get together and stop the transportation of wild steelhead above the dam. That is just killing our wild steelhead, and we leave them down below and let them do their thing. Truck all the hatchery fish up you want. As a matter of fact, I've pushed for a year-round fishery on that lake for the amount of coho that are trucked up there, and also the wild steelhead is something that needs to be looked at for people that want to troll a lake. My other comment is, all this is on winter run steelhead. We have 2 rivers in this area that have summer run. I don't think the department really understands how many people could come to southwestern Washington, the other side of I-5, and fish summer run steelhead if they had more access. The Satsop doesn't have any. The Chehalis doesn't have any. Wynoochee and Hump Tulips are the only 2, and it is a great fishery. You don't have a lot of cold weather. Lake Aberdeen has raised them for years, and it's been a active fishery. And because I've partaken of that for 40 years. And I think it's something that needs to be looked at. We always talk winter run like that's a God-given fish. I'm here to tell you, people on the other side of I-5, there's a lot of summer run fishing. We need it on this side. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next hand is Larry. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks again, guys. Just real quick. So I'm still struggling, Mike, and maybe help me out here with understanding why the Chehalis main stem would close on January 1. You know, I know that the upper Chehalis has historically had a decent portion of the overall wild fish spawning or fish returning that area. Certainly the tribes are going to be both fishing the main stem. You know, when I think about the statewide steelhead management plan and both spatial and timing distribution, you know, I think that having the entire system, if possible, would address both of those issues by spreading out the effort and not disproportionately impacting one river system versus the entire system. Thanks.
Thanks, Larry, and certainly we're going to look into that. And again, looking at taking too big of a step first thing out in those types of questions, and in some of those mixed stock fisheries, and where can we actually do a great job at monitoring them. All of those are things that we take into consideration, but we'll certainly, we've noted it down and we'll take a look at that.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, that was again our last hand.
So
we want to
Aaron,
maybe
I'm sorry, Leah. Aaron, maybe go to our timeline slide as we wait and see if people have other things they want to share. And not to steal your thunder, Leah, but I see as I was saying that Ty just raised his hand. So go ahead, Ty.
Oh yeah, before I forgot to mention Willapa Bay trips. You know, last year through pretty good steelhead fishing in November and December, and unfortunately, the wild showing and low water conditions closed the river to bait in December. And really limited the wild impacts while the commercial guys were still fishing. And I just would hope that the department considers doing that again this year. They would keep boat bait open, or maybe that management plan needs to look at paired restrictions so that commercial fishing and sport fishing are both conserving those early wild coho. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that because I know we may be facing restrictions this winter again on the nacelle due to low spawning count numbers that were observed. So there isn't any indications that coho will be restricted at all, but that's all. Anyways, thanks, guys.
thank you, Ty. Our next hand is from caller ending in 445. Go ahead. Oh, I think you might be have remuted. I just prompted you to unmute.
Can you hear me
It
now?
looks like, yeah, we got you now.
Okay. Hey, my comments are predominantly for the Naysel River. I don't target steelhead a lot. I stopped fishing around the 15th of December. That Lake Coho run means a lot to me since I was the one that got it restarted. And the peak of the run is for those Lake Coho the first 2 weeks of December. I would really like to see that bait ban kick back to the 15th of December if there's any way that that could happen. I don't have access to all the slides and whatever you guys and the data. I'll take a look at that after the meeting, but just issues that are really affecting our ability to target the Lake Coho. And it just seems a bit of a conundrum to put in regulations to protect one stock when the other stock is the success rate drops down substantially with that bait ban. The other thing is the rule regarding not fishing from a floating device. We'd like to see that rule implemented on the Naysel in a permanent fashion, and not due to steelhead. It's a gear conflict issue. That's our concern there. And Kelly, I think you and I are going to be hooking up here in a couple of weeks, and maybe we can talk about that further. But I just wanted to get it out there that it is an issue, and would like to see something happen there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I thought I recognized your voice, Steve. Yeah, give me a shout. I'm still interested in getting your perspective on the Naysel there. Appreciate your comments. You got my email. Let's find a time to chat.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Our next hand is from Max. Max, go ahead.
Hey, I just want to talk for a second. I came in a little late, so I didn't miss what they came out of the boat versus no boat fishery. But from my perspective, a no boat fishery is kind of a total joke in the sense that it's a great idea to test and try, but we're all really smart and capable of figuring it out without it. And the amount of boats on per se the Hoh this year was to the degree that it makes no difference if you're fishing on a boat or not, because every hole is full of someone fishing. So it kind of is like that. But I'll get over that statement and just say my overall statement is, with the increased abundance or perceived abundance in recent years, the best way to obviously help every single river system is to open more of the river systems in order to allow people to spread out and then not have the pressure that we saw in the Hoh this year to help spread that abundance out. And that obviously will take the fish count and the number of fish caught down significantly with spreading that out over the different rivers. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Our next hand is from Joey. Joey, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks everyone from WDFW. Great reports. And I've been following these town halls for a while, and this is good news, good trends. November 13th is right around the corner. End of November is coming up quick too. And I'm just kind of curious, can you shed any light on, specifically, other than the co-manager requirements, what's needed to decide on the April fishery for the Hoh and the Quillayute? Excuse me. Is there a specific, run size target, or what is kind of the next steps in that topic, just to see how that could come back in terms of an April fishery? Thanks.
You want me to take a stab at that one? I think that there's we have a forecast, as evidenced by last year's run size blowing way past the forecast. I think forecasts can be not an exact science. Allowing that decision to be pushed a little further down the road to where we have some in-season indicators such as tribal catch, observations, fishing reports, allows us the opportunity to make that decision a little bit later along with co-managers. I think that said, there's also some factors in having the river closed in April that are a little bit harder to quantify. On the Hoh, looking at historic data, you know, how much of the catch it happens in April, but there's also, it's, you know, really mid-March to mid-April is the peak spawn timing, and not having a lot of anglers and a lot of boats for at least a part of the steelhead spawn timing, I think maybe one of those more difficult to quantify pieces of what having April closures looks like. But I think primarily the answer is being able to make that decision a little further into the run size will allow us the ability to make some in-season management decisions as we go.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. And just a reminder to folks, if you have any burning questions or comments to make, kind of last chance here to get them in. We're kind of getting close to the last 10 minutes, so raise your hand. Our last hand for right now is Reve. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just curious, are we still using the Bentley study to kind of establish an interception rate? And if so, is there any moves to update that?
Evan, do you want to take that one as part of the larger statewide creel cons, or would you like?
I can take a stab at that. I think it's safe to say that the aim is to use our kind of increased monitoring and recent years of creel to get to updated and better information on those estimated catch and what that means in terms of the estimates of total handle rate in fisheries. I don't think I can speak to the current use of that number though.
Thank you, Evan and Reve. Our last hand is from Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, there apparently, obviously, there's a lot of comments about the boat study and the Hoh, and I've heard several comments tonight about the amount of boats on the Hoh this year and it being overly busy. I dug in, unless Evan's going to correct me, I dug in on some of this boat study information, and last year we had 250 or close to 250 more interviews last year than we did the previous year. And yet we caught less fish last year than we did the previous year with a much larger run of fish. And we were fishing in our boats. The other number that really astounded me was that 2 years ago, we had, I got to do my math right, we had 48,000 angler hours 2 years ago on the Hoh, fishing from the bank. Fishing from the boat last year, we had 32,000 hours. We had a reduction of 16,000 hours. A reduction of 16,000 hours of use on the river using our boats versus fishing from the bank. So that means we had less time on the water. Less time on the water is less impacts. It was less fish caught. It was less footprint on the water. So we talk about using our boats, and there's more to just using our boats. It's not just about catch rates. It's about time on the water. It's about all of those other things. So this was data that wasn't provided tonight, and I understand it's a short meeting, but this is information I dug in. And unless any of those numbers are wrong, and Evan will correct me, but that's what I dug in and found. So for some of you that don't know that, you got to think about those part of those things too. When it comes to a boat study, there's more than just, did we catch more fish from a boat? The most astronomical was we spent 16,000 hours less time on the water last year, and we caught less fish last year with a significantly larger run than we did the year before. So that's all I got about that boat study, which I still think is important. I think we need to continue to do. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob. And I think you're pointing out, one really kind of key point is that what we presented today is really just catch rates, and that's just from interview data. And the effort piece is critical to get to that final estimate of catch. So we're just not quite there yet in terms of what we can really say about that regulation and its effectiveness to make a difference in terms of our total catch on steelhead. In regard to the the current understanding of catch estimates, I think there is some work to do to get to final catch estimates for this most recent season. So I would, I think I would take the current understanding as something that's preliminary, and I can tell you that we're working toward that to get to finalized estimates. So the difference in catch between these kind of past 2 years, they might not be as big as the current data, the current estimates would indicate. Stay tuned for that, and also happy to chat directly about this too. And so look forward to further engagement on that.
So Leah, we got time for one more, and then we need to wrap this up. I want to be respectful of people's time.
That sounds great. We have one more hand from Guy. Guy, go ahead.
Hey, thanks everybody. I'm really surprised that nobody's been doing cartwheels about that number on the Hoh this year. I think that's a record-setting number. I was going back to all the literature and looking to see how that compares. And we don't have to go into the gory details now, but I'd like to drill down more on how all of a sudden we were able to exceed the projection that much. That's a big number, and I just would like to talk about that at some time, not right now, but I'm surprised people haven't been talking about that during this meeting.
There may have been a few cartwheels, Guy.
Well, I would hope so. No, the Hoh's been really improving. It's been looking really good, and so the trend is obvious. That's good. That's a big jump. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. So I'm glad you're doing cartwheels. Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, again, I just want to reiterate my appreciation for all of you spending your time here with us tonight. Maybe calling your attention to this slide in front of you. Our next town hall is on the 13th. We got a lot of work to do between now and then. We're also working with the Fish Committee to schedule kind of a latter half of November, kind of pre-Thanksgiving Fish Committee meeting where we can share with them not only where we're headed with the regulations, but what we heard from you all. And then the other thing, just looking at the participants list, I see a lot of familiar names, but I see a lot of names that are new to this process, and maybe just want to call your attention to the webpage. I don't think it's a link, but down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see wdfw.wa.gov/coastal steelhead. There's a lot of really good information there. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we left out a lot of the life history stuff and some of the environmental concerns that we've been thinking about the last few years. But if you're interested, that's a good resource for you. You'll see links to previous town hall meetings and other information. But with that, again, just thank you all for being here with us tonight. Like I said, we got a lot of work to do, and we look forward to coming back to you in mid-November and continuing the conversation. So hope everybody has a great night. Take care of yourselves, and good luck out there. Thank you.